#1. Join us in the Lunchroom, our new midday talk show where we provide you with food for thought. The Lunchroom, a show that serves a mix of subjects, chatting with the personalities in and out of the news, developments, business, politics, technology, and the arts. In the Lunchroom, you'll get a taste of everything that's adding flavor to St. Lucia. The Lunchroom, weekdays after the news from 12:45 to 2 p.m. Only on RCI. On RCI.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International for Wednesday, May the 6th, 2026. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. We are, of course, available on 101.1 FM radio, but you can also get us at our website, rcistlucia.com, and we are streaming live as well on Facebook as well as on YouTube. And you can search for us on the official page of Radio Caribbean International. Please be sure to like and share that as well with your friends and family. The number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, you can call direct to 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And we can also be reached on WhatsApp. That number, 284-6001. And you can message in or call in via WhatsApp, 284-6001. I look back in time on this day, and we go back to the year 1527. Spanish and German imperial troops sacked Rome, ending the Renaissance. Charles III, the Duke of Bourbon, killed in the assault, removing any restraint for the victorious soldiers. In the year 1626, on this day, the Dutch colonist Peter Minuit organized the purchase of Manhattan from Native Americans for 60 guilders worth of goods believed to be the Carnacy Indians making that sale. In the year 1889, on this day, the Exposition Universelle, or the World's Fair, opened in Paris and opened the recently completed Eiffel Tower, which was serving as the entrance arch. And the elevators in the tower were not yet ready, so intrepid visitors had to climb 1,710 steps to reach the top. 1937, on this day, May the 6th, the German airship, the Hindenburg, exploded in flames at Lakehurst, New Jersey, killing 35 of the 97 on board and 1 on the ground. Joseph Stalin became premier of the Soviet Union, replacing Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov in the year 1941. And on this day, May the 6th, 2001, during a trip to Syria, Pope John Paul II became the first pope to visit a mosque. And we saw another Pope, Leo XIV, doing the same during his recent trip to Algeria. We now head across to our dish of the day.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
Welcome back to our program for today, and of course we hope that everybody's having a pretty good one. Wanted to share an interesting post coming from Dr. Kenyatta Joseph, St. Lucian historian who teaches over in Trinidad and Tobago, and in fact also in relation to a lot of work that she's done in the area of studies in the history of Indians, East Indians in St. Lucia. And today, in fact, is the anniversary of the first trip of East Indians coming into St. Lucia. I think it was on May the 6th, 53, I believe, when that first ship came across with a number of St. Lucian, persons of East Indian descent who were coming from India directly into the Caribbean and, of course, into islands like St. Lucia as well as Martinique. A large number of them, in fact, eventually, I think about half of them eventually returned to India after their period of indentureship. And of course, this was in the period post-emancipation, where there were significant challenges for the colonies that now found themselves not having forced labor. And of course, especially in places like St. Lucia, where there was more land available for persons to seek flight and to utilize for their own pursuits, we saw a requirement for more labor. And this was particularly so in recently acquired colonies, which Britain gained in some measure as a result of their success in the Napoleonic Wars, which were at the turn of the beginning of the 19th century, the early 1800s. And so the likes of Trinidad, for example, recent colony, did not have a very large population in comparison to the amount of land that was available for development. And the same existed in the case of the British Guiana. In fact, even during that period, prior to that, Britain had gained the Dutch colonies of Guyana. At that time, there were about 3 different colonies, one known as Essequibo, one known as Demerara, and one known as Berbice. And they amalgamated those colonies eventually to create British Guiana. And there too, not enough labor for the vast quantities of land that were available for agricultural development. And so the thrust to look for new labor was effectively being done by the British through looking at different sources of places where they could in fact achieve that. In some measure, there were a number of free Africans who came to the Caribbean shortly after emancipation, and those were individuals who were being brought in as indentured laborers, and of course particularly from certain regions of Africa, the Neg-Guinea, for example. Although that said, what we now know as Guinea was a much broader area in that period of time. The entire Guinea coast, as it was known, was a very large swath of West Africa. And so that generalization, of course, does not necessarily give the true location of where those individuals came from immediately, given today's boundaries of what would be considered Guinea. And so you found a number coming from Africa later on, and then as well attempts at bringing Portuguese from Madeira, as well as East Indians coming in from India to work on many estates. And of course, within that context, St. Lucia also, a relatively new colony in terms of a British colony, albeit, of course, they had been fighting over it with the French for a very long time, was also in search of new labor as well, of new sources of workforce. Part of the challenge, of course, in the case of St. Lucia, and it's not often appreciated, is that there was a significant amount of loss of life during the period of the Revolutionary Wars here in St. Lucia. And a number of individuals suffered due to the warfare that was going on. And of course, there were also instances where persons who would have then been perceived to have been risks to the security of the colony would have in fact been removed from the colonies altogether. And we saw that happening in the case of St. Vincent. And these individuals who we know as the Garifuna today of Belize and Honduras find their roots from these islands in the Antilles, and in particular from St. Vincent. In the case of St. Lucia as well, there too, because of the warfare that was going on at the end of the capture of Mont Fortune in May of 1796, there was in fact a significant force of soldiers who were fighting at that time and were in effect taken away from the Caribbean altogether as prisoners of war and shipped across the Atlantic to the United Kingdom. And much of the recognition of that has come recently as a result of some unearthing that has been done at Portchester Castle in the south of England, where many of those individuals found themselves imprisoned. Now, as a result of that, the drops in the numbers there, the productivity going down, there was also this thrust towards getting East Indians to come in as well. And so even though we're speaking about an event that happened in 1796, it still had its implications during the 1830s, 1840s, and of course the need to bring in new persons to work on these islands here. Now, that of course does not necessarily give the full picture, because what also happened is that even after they worked within St. Lucia, some also sought refuge in other islands where there were larger East Indian populations and within which they could maintain their culture. They went to Trinidad and Guyana in particular. So even some of the individuals who are in Trinidad and Guyana, East Indians, actually do have some connection with St. Lucia as well. What you, of course, had in the smaller islands was an effort to acclimatize and acculturate individuals who were here, and so there were efforts to convert a number of the persons coming in from India. Some of them were varying religions. Some may have been Hindu, as well as what would have been termed at the time as Mohammedan or Muslim. And they, through the efforts of largely Presbyterian ministers and religious missionaries coming out of Canada, were engaged in the conversion of those individuals. So they, in fact, established special schools in particular areas where there were high populations of East Indians, like Crown Lands, for example, in the Cul-de-Sac Valley, in Canels, in the south of the island, in Miku. I think there was also another one established in the Roseau Valley, where, in fact, to this day, we still have somewhere with the name Cooley Town. Of course, Cooley, now seen as derogatory, particularly in many countries that have large East Indian populations, because that was a derogatory term that was used to refer to persons of East Indian descent. The these institutions, religious institutions, later on ended up being handed over to the Methodist community with the departure of the Presbyterians from St. Lucia. But of course, in the case of Trinidad, you'd still find a large Presbyterian presence in the south of Trinidad because of this presence here as well. So, of course, it is an opportune time to remember the contribution of persons of East Indian descent to St. Lucia and what they have brought forward in terms of their culture, in terms of their different aspects of it, in fact, and of course, cuisine. And so we definitely want to make mention of it. We don't really have an official Indian arrival day like that of Trinidad, for example, but it is certainly something that we have to consider, albeit it maybe on the demographic side, we may only see 4-5% of the population of East Indian descent, but it certainly might be more than that because, of course, the reality is, as a result of mixing, they are, of course, very much part of the St. Lucian population. That's our dish of the day, and when we come back, we'll touch on a few other matters and, of course, open up the lines to take in your calls.
This has been The Daily Dish.
Welcome back to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. Now, the matter of Parliament is something that has been discussed here in St. Lucia within the context of constitutional reform. And that, of course, a matter which was mentioned recently in the throne speech, which was delivered at the opening of Parliament for this new session of St. Lucia's 13th Parliament. Over in the United Kingdom, they are also looking at some reforms that are ongoing in terms of their own system of government. Now, in the UK, there is no written constitution, and many things are actually done by practice and what is understood in terms of what has existed. Now, what has certainly been part of the system of Parliament in the United Kingdom for a very long time is the whole idea of peerage and hereditary peerage in particular. Effectively, what occurred back in the year 1066 when the Normans, persons from the Normandy region, descendants of Vikings who laid claim to the English crown, and William, the Duke of Normandy, coming across, invading, taking possession, killing the existing ruler, taking possession of that country, which is England. They effectively divided up the country and gave out lands to his various, noblemen and strong supporters and soldiers who would have fought with him. And that was how effectively the system was run. There was this whole thing called the Doomsday Book, in which all the different estates would have been listed and who owned what and what was on those various estates at that time. And coming out of that, a system existed where effectively later on, when there was this whole concept of Parliament being this assembly of the lords of the various lands and estates and duchies, they all had this right to a seat in the Parliament. And later on, of course, Parliament evolved, eventually allowing for the creation of what is now the lower house, or the House of Commons, which became the elected house, and eventually, of course, became the house which really determined the laws and the governance of the country. And this, of course, is what our constitution, our system of government has been modeled after. The upper house in the United Kingdom, the House of Lords, has been sort of a hodgepodge of different representation, with lords coming from as a basis of hereditary right, persons who would have effectively been able to trace themselves and that their right to have a seat in Parliament back to for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, 900 years in some instances. So that was there, but also even bishops had seats in the House of Lords, and others too. Later on, the allowance of the appointment of individuals by the government to have seats in the Lords. However, there has been a move to remove this right, this hereditary right, in respect of the House of Lords in the UK, and it has finally seemed to have happened. And so I think we do have a clip that is available which touches on it just a little bit, in that there was a prorogation of Parliament recently, and effectively that called to an end this system which has been around effectively for nearly 900 years.
Finally, it's not every day that 1,000 years of history in British life comes to an end. It did today in the House of Lords, as the political term did the same. You could call it the end of the hereditary peer show, as the last of them left the chamber and their place in the constitution of this country for the final time.
Restoration and renewal.
Packing up for good.
Renters' rights.
Until this afternoon, the Earls of Devon had supported kings and queens in Parliament for 900 years, or at least most of it.
With some periods of absence following beheadings and attainders and such like, but yeah, I mean, we've been serving for a long time.
And it has just ended?
Yeah, ended today, about 1:30. It feels quite significant, although also quite normal.
This was the moment in the House of Lords today.
We do, in His Majesty's name and in obedience to His Majesty's commands, prorogue this Parliament.
When the parliamentary session ended and the 76 remaining hereditary peers lost their seats. A couple of dozen are expected to return with life peerages. Lord Strathclyde hopes to be one, but he thinks the reform has been botched.
Is the government making a mistake getting rid of the hereditary peers?
Very much so. This is a completely missed opportunity to get a long-term reform of the House of Lords. Instead, this is the creation of a wholly appointed House in the hands of the Prime Minister, and that just feels wrong.
The Lords initially assembled to advise the sovereign and at one time wielded considerable power. By the time of the first televised debate, accompanied by the first broadcast protest in the public gallery, they were subordinate to the House of Commons. In 1999, the Blair government began a process of ejecting hereditary peers, which concluded today.
We started the process of saying hereditary peers shouldn't sit in the House of Lords over 25 years ago. And the principle that somebody should be here on their own merits of what they have done and what they're going to do, rather than that of their ancestors, is a principle that we think is important.
All of which means that when the King arrives to reopen Parliament in a couple of weeks, for the first time in history, he will be the only person present whose authority derives from his ancestry. Carl Dinny, News at 10, Westminster.
All right, so of course, a very notable change there in the system that has existed in the United Kingdom, as they themselves are trying to shift and potentially democratize the system of government. Still, though, the House effectively then becoming, the House of Lords then becoming more of a place of persons who are going to be appointed And so then that still raises the question, is it really a suitable enough check? Is it perhaps a time for the House of Lords or the upper house to be treated more as a place that has regional representation? Of course, this is the route that many other countries have gone. The United States, for example, with its Senate, they have representation coming. The idea of the Senate really is that all the states are effectively equal in respect of that body, because they all have the same number of seats, each state having 2 seats or 2 senators in the Senate. And so there is that sort of balance that you get, so that although, of course, the larger states by population, the likes of the Californias and the Texas and the New Yorks, they all have a more proportional representation in terms of population in the House of Representatives. It is the upper house that sort of levels the playing field in terms of protecting the state interest. Is that something that potentially may eventually happen in the United Kingdom, especially given the fact that it has 4 constituent countries, and maybe might want to go that route? And then, of course, there are some who argue, is an upper house required at all if you don't have, such a large state of play with different states and different countries within a system. Of course, some countries in the Caribbean have gone that route with merely one house, that of St. Vincent, for example, and the Grenadines. The same for Dominica, and some relatively larger countries like Taiwan, for example, have only one house as well. So certainly some things to think about within the context of constitutional reform, and that conversation, which of course has been prefaced by the throne speech making mention of the need to look at the matter of the Constitution, including the matter of who is the head of state. We're going to take a break at this point in time to take in our weather report. When we come back, we'll be opening up the lines.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with these tile stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle-dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my #1 store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous styles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and Vieux Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And that's all, of course, on the 1.1. It's now time for your weather forecast as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Tile and Bath. Forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours. Winds will be blowing from the east near 18 miles per hour or 30 kilometers per hour. The weather partly cloudy to occasionally cloudy skies with some light to moderate showers. The forecast for the West Antilles is partly cloudy to occasionally cloudy skies with some light to moderate showers. And the weather summary: the Atlantic high pressure system will maintain moderate easterly winds across the region during the next couple of days. A weak tropical wave located over the eastern Caribbean will cause some showers over the Lesser Antilles during the next 24 hours. Another tropical wave located over the eastern tropical Atlantic is moving westward in near 10 miles per hour or 17 kilometers per hour. And this has been your weather forecast as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bath.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with the style stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my #1 store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous tiles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and View Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
Welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. And of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And our WhatsApp number, that is 284-6001. 284-6001. We go to the phone lines at this time to take in some calls. Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunch. Good afternoon, and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today? How are you, caller? Right. Well, that's a very, very interesting point in terms of that genealogical work. I think there is some effort at play in trying to do some of that because in some instances, I understand some of them were in fact assimilated into the United Kingdom. So you actually had some individuals who very early on, had families with persons, in the population. So I think there is a recognition of some of that. Some of these individuals, well, some of them died, unfortunately, as well, as a result of the conditions that they were in. There's also a very famous instance of a vessel called the London, which was one of the transports bringing those individuals, those prisoners of war, to England, and it ended up hitting against the rocks in near Rapparee Cove in Devon, and so I think there's actually a record of that, a very interesting aspect of the history of some of these individuals in that regard. But as well, some of them returned to the Caribbean, and I think in fact, some of them ended up getting back into war. Continued fighting in the Caribbean, and a very notable one is Louis Delgray, who in fact ended up fighting in Guadeloupe and was a very famous. Well, you read about Masada, so it was the Caribbean's version of a Masada, where instead of being allowed to go back into slavery, they effectively decided that they were going to kill themselves. They blew up the fort that they were in instead of being taken prisoner or being captured by the French. And this was under the Napoleonic period then, I think in 1802. So you have a lot of different paths. I think so, I suspect some ended up in France. Some may very well have ended up back in St. Lucia. Who knows? What is also very fascinating about that period is the fact that you would have St. Lucians, quite possibly, who are descendants of the relatives of some of these individuals who would have been left behind. And one of the famous generals in this Maroon Army was a gentleman by the name of Marinier. And he's also described by, I think it's John Moore in his book on this entire matter, where he speaks about his period in St. Lucia, and notes that Marinier was from Groseilliers, and he still had a brother who was a fisherman in Groseilliers. So there's some very interesting possibilities, as you're rightfully saying, in terms of tracking. And I'm not even too sure, maybe some DNA testing, because DNA now certainly is allowing you, the advances that have been made, to actually look at some of the bones and see if in fact these people have living relatives right here in St. Lucia. That would be very, very fascinating indeed. Caller, you there? Oh, I thought we still had the caller. Looks like the caller actually hung up already. But of course, yes, certainly very, very interesting possibilities. The number to call in to tell us what's on your plate, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And, well, just on the matter of jazz, of course, Main Stage Jazz is going to be kicking off tonight at the Pigeon Island National Landmark. It's dubbed Kingdom Night, which has been a relatively new aspect of the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival. Let's go to the phone lines. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Lunchroom. And what's on your plate today? Okay, I heard some of what you said, caller, but you were breaking up a little bit. You were talking about the BBC having a program, and it captured some of that. Ah, I see. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay, yes. Yes, yes. In fact, I think there's even they used to even put on theatrical productions at the castle, and people would come and actually participate and watch it. Yes, so yeah, you are right that there was. Yes, yes. That's correct. He was actually Louis Delgray. From what I've read of him, he was actually born in Martinique. He was from Saint Pierre, and he was in fact a trained French soldier, but of course of mixed ancestry, and he was very much part of the action here in Saint Lucia. He. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and of course there were some areas where there were lands afforded to them to to settle on. And so that's why we have, of course, some communities where you have high presence of East Indians in St. Lucia up to this day. So, yeah, definitely, caller. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, yes, yes. Indeed, and of course, thanks for sharing that. In fact, a lot of them end up getting involved in butchery. Interestingly enough, yes, there's a yes. Thank you very much, caller. Have a good one. And of course, we were mentioning as well the start of Main Stage Jazz, which is kicking off tonight at the Pigeon Island National Landmark, and Kingdom Night, which has been growing and growing in numbers. Originally, when it started, it was a relatively smaller event, maybe about 3,000 people, but now it's actually effectively almost level with or rivaling some of the other nights that have been on the main stage calendar for quite some time. Certainly, what has appeared to become the leading night is actually the Friday night event, which has almost been really stretching to the numbers of patrons heading into Pigeon Island. And I suppose because of the association with our own very own music, it's certainly a very big show indeed. Traditionally, the Sunday show would have been the main one, but I think you've seen some shifting as well in terms of the interest based on the genres of music that are available. But this year, it'll be very interesting to see, because of some of the names that are there, how it is all going to culminate in terms of the numbers. But of course, persons are going to have to bear some patience on the roads. It, of course, is one of the major challenges in terms of putting on an event of this size and scale. Of course, the challenges with parking and the park and rides and the back and forth into the space. So we do hope that people can do so responsibly. Yesterday would normally have been a free show within the jazz calendar. That of Moshi Jazz, unfortunately, wasn't held this year. And a story coming from the St. Lucia Times on this matter. Moshi Jazz will not be held this year. Grosley MP Kenson Kazemi announced on Monday. Typically, Moshi Jazz is one of the final community events of the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, which concludes on Sunday, May the 10th. Moshi Jazz, with its tagline Musique en Creole, drew thousands into the community, providing significant economic benefits to vendors and other suppliers. At a pre-cabinet press briefing, Kazemi announced that the organizers have decided not to hold Moshi Jazz in 2026. Quote, Moshi Jazz has bloomed into a premier event that is first and foremost free of charge. It is the only event that we have, and the whole concept was to give individuals from the community that are not able to afford main stage jazz an opportunity to experience jazz, the MP said. Over the years, we have had a number of people that would previously volunteer but are now asking for compensation. So we now have a price tag of between $175,000 and $200,000 for an event. In addition, although community events receive some support from the St. Lucia Tourism Authority, sponsorship to offset costs has dwindled. Quote, sponsorship has spread throughout St. Lucia due to the number of community events that are being hosted, and so the commitment from sponsors to actually host Moshi Jazz did not meet the marker of anywhere near $175,000, Kazemi said. He added that the organizers will review the event and aim to return next year with the high-quality experience Moshi Jazz is known for. That story coming from Mr. Tony Nicholas of the St. Lucia Times. And again, pointing out really the significant costs that must be borne to, in fact, put on a number of these events. And certainly when they are free, you can well imagine the challenge that exists. Started off certainly some years back during the period of Honorable Emma Hippolyte being the MP for Grosley. And again, another event that has certainly bloomed and grown tremendously. But of course, in growing, you then, of course, are speaking of, greater expectations in terms of the production and in terms of the infrastructure that has to be put in place to be able to handle the crowds and the masquerade management, event management. And so it is certainly challenging when we're speaking of putting on free events. And of course, with a paid event, you kind of get an idea as to, well, how many people would be coming, based on your ticket sales, based on, capacity. And it's a little difficult when anybody can really come in. And so it certainly then means that perhaps the model that has to be looked at potentially has to be reconsidered to some degree. It's great to think that there are free aspects of this festival. It's always nice to know that people can enjoy it regardless of their socioeconomic position, that there's something for everyone in the festival. Certainly that has been one of the hallmarks of the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, and in particular the efforts in terms of art in the city to keep the festival grounded and local and accessible, because within it as well, there has to be that inspirational value and aspect to it that our young people are finding a space within this event. And again, so kudos to the efforts of the Castries Constituencies Council and the MP for Castries Central, Honorable Richard Frederick, for the efforts of putting on the youth jazz event, the junior jazz event, which was put on last week at Serenity Park, because it then allows for this opportunity for young people to get that stage, to get a platform, to begin seeing, to begin growing their confidence and seeing what's possible for them in the space of music and entertainment. Many of these things were perhaps not available 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and having it now certainly is very welcome for the young people, for youth of St. Lucia at this time. Of course, there are still lots of ways to go in terms of what has to be done at the level of schools, and ensuring that music education becomes more central and part of the curriculum. Many have lamented that, the teaching of music is still very much limited in many places to playing that recorder, right? And not getting the kind of exposure and training that is necessary. And so institutions, even beyond the St. Lucia School of Music, having, the mainstreaming of it at the level of the school is also something that's really important. I mean, again, if you look at how many students, for argument's sake, do or undertake music at the CXC level, very, 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 very few. And it is something that, as a society, we also need to think about, because we are speaking about the arts, we are speaking about growth of the arts, growth of development of musicians and talent in this regard. But there is certainly still a lot of value in being able to have music education and arts education in our education system, in our curriculum. Just recently, I think just last week, in fact, the Prime Minister and Member of Parliament for Castries East was in his constituency making a donation of steel pans to the Diamond Steel Orchestra. That institution has been around for a good while, and it's important that these community orchestras, these community institutions are there to help mold and bring forward communities and to create these avenues for young people to get involved in. And wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if we could get to a point, where every school may very well have its own steel pan orchestra, and we could see the amount of potential for one, competition, and of course learning and ability to improve in that regard. So very important that there is that educational aspect within events like the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival. The Cultural Development Foundation, for their part, I know they've been trying to put on their masterclass series where they do try to bring in various musicians and artists and individuals who can share and teach and train and inspire young musicians and artists and creatives as well. So that is also very, very good and something that we certainly need to be able to see come out of this type of effort. The stage performance is very interesting as well, what is being done at this level. At this point with this year, I think nearly 4 different theatrical productions. Can that be replicated? Can we see to get to a level where that is maybe even more, or even maybe a season of plays, which was once the dream, of course, no doubt, and efforts of the St. Lucia Arts Guild and the likes of Roddy and Derek Walcott and many other actors who were involved in that era back in the 1950s. Well, we're now 70 years on with a larger population, and it would be great if that could be something that is realized, that each school, each institution is actually getting that platform to be able to put on and to perform and to hone in on the talents that are available amongst our young people. Because clearly, even within this world that we're living in right now, where we're speaking about artificial intelligence, and the big question is, well, what can a human being bring that is very hard for a computer to replicate? And what you find is that a lot of it has to do with our ability to in artistic spaces. That's where we really are remarkable creatures. And so there is certainly a great value in the teaching of the arts within this context of looking towards the future. How can we be creative? How can we bring a particular value to the world? And this is very, very important in that regard. And especially given the fact that more and more the visitor experience is being driven by what people want to experience, right? They're looking for that authenticity. They're looking for something different. And culture is certainly something that is I wouldn't say it's untouchable, but certainly is puts you at a different space. And we saw it, I think, in respect of this competition that was going on between the islands in terms of iShow speed and who can portray what better, and who what's the most appealing, and what is the responses have been, what captured the attention of the audience the most, so that what were they looking at in terms of what would send them to do Google searches about this island or that island. And certainly some of the things that stood out was the cultural aspects, the things that really were that you couldn't necessarily replicate in terms of sun, sea, and sand, which very much of our islands have. In any case, so the likes of, for example, the Dominica came to the fore with the matter of the Kalinago and the traditions that existed there, and so that was very appealing to a lot of people. So we definitely have to appreciate that aspect in terms of culture, in terms of heritage, in terms of the arts, to be able to set us differently in terms of our outward facing to the world, and of course, especially within this context of being such a tourism-dependent island, these things certainly do carry great amount of weight. That's our program for today here at the Lunchroom, and we do hope that you can join us again tomorrow for another one. I think we're going to be having a giveaway tomorrow, compliments the St. Lucia Civil Service Association. They are going to be having a giveaway of some jazz tickets for Friday night, I believe it is. So Caribbean Fusion. So if you want to be heading to jazz on Friday, you've got the opportunity to tune in to Radio Caribbean International's Lunchroom tomorrow for this 75th anniversary CSA promotion. Jazz giveaway tickets. Of course, there'll be a question which you will be expected to answer. So for CSA members out there, this is a great opportunity for you to get something wonderful from your association. So please tune in to look out for that tomorrow as well. I'm your host, Alex George Jr., saying goodbye.